My son called me. Your beach house and car are gone. We're leaving tomorrow. I calmly replied. All right, but you forgot something. He asked what? I burst out laughing. The house she sold was really. My name's Rose. 67 this year, and just a few months back, I walked into what I thought would be another one of those family dinners, expecting a forced truce at best. Instead, I found myself seated figuratively by the trash, only to later unveil a situation that made my son's head spin with panic. Drop your city below and stick around. The way this all flipped still brings a smile to my face. It was a typically overcast Monday morning, the kind that still feels peaceful, even in my large, somewhat echoing home here in Williamsburg. I was on the porch, nursing a mug of coffee, wrapped in my old wool cardigan, watching the autumn leaves dance across the lawn. This house, it held 37 years of life with Owen. Now, 5 years after he left, it felt enormous, almost too quiet for just me. The calm was broken by a phone ringing, and the number on the screen was instantly recognizable, Lionel. My son rarely called just to chat. His calls usually came with an agenda, some new, rational suggestion for my life's improvement. Good morning, Lionel, I said, trying to infuse my voice with a lightness I didn't quite feel. The last thing I wanted was for him to comment on any perceived weakness or sadness in my tone. Mom, you awake yet? The familiar edge of impatience was there. I need to swing by your place this afternoon. There are some things we absolutely have to discuss. What's the matter, dear? I asked, my stomach already tightening with a sense of dread. Just financial things. Nothing urgent. But his voice, his voice contradicted every word. I'll be there around 2. He hung up before I could even reply. I sighed, taking another sip of my now cool coffee. I was 67, perfectly healthy, perfectly capable. But Lionel, who'd only just turned 42 himself, seemed to have decided otherwise. Ever since Owen passed away 5 years ago, Lionel's approach to me had shifted. It started subtly. He'd speak louder, slower, as if I'd suddenly become hard of hearing or struggled with plain English. Then came the lessons on the most basic tasks: how to use an ATM, how to sign a check, setting an alarm clock. Things I had been doing flawlessly for half a century. I got up, heading inside. I needed to get the house spick and span before his visit. Sometimes I felt I had to present a flawless front, just so he wouldn't find another excuse to worry about me. This house, a 2-story, 4-bedroom with a big kitchen and a garden I loved to tend, had always been my pride and joy. Owen and I had bought it when Iris was 5 and Lionel 7. These walls hummed with so many memories. But with each year after Owen, the house felt progressively hollow, quieter. As I straightened the bed, my gaze fell on the picture frame, Owen and me on our 30th anniversary. His eyes, even in the photo, held that same tenderness from the day we first met. Rose, you're the strongest woman I know, he'd often say. I wondered what he'd think seeing how his son was treating me now. Precisely at 2 p.m., the doorbell chimed. Lionel's punctuality was legendary. I'd opened it to find him, tall and lean with his usual preoccupied frown, standing beside Veronica, my sister-in-law. She was a petite blonde, sharp-eyed, her thin lips rarely curving into a genuine smile. Mom, Lionel said, giving me a quick, almost perfunctory hug before stepping back, scrutinizing me. You look well. Veronica brought you a blueberry pie. Veronica presented a perfectly baked pie. No sugar, she announced, as if granting me a huge favor. We're just keeping an eye on your health. I thanked her and led them into the living room. While Veronica busied herself setting out the cups I'd retrieved, Lionel began his customary pacing, his eyes sweeping over every surface. Mom, when did you last call a plumber? There's a spot on the hallway ceiling. Looks like a leak. There's no leak, Lionel. I tried to keep my voice steady. It's a shadow from the big tree outside. It's always been there. Are you certain? He furrowed his brow. I can have my guy take a look. You know, little problems can become huge expenses if they're not caught in time. I just nodded, knowing it was futile to argue. He always found something to fix. Over the past year, he'd already called electricians, carpenters, and gardeners, all of whom had confirmed there was nothing actually wrong. Once we were settled at the table, Laiano pulled a thick folder from his briefcase. "Mom," he started, his tone mirroring the one he used with his 10-year-old daughter. "We need to talk about your finances." I tensed. He continued, "I reviewed your bank statements for the past 3 months, and some transactions are concerning." My blood ran cold. "How did you get my statements, Laiano?" He hesitated, just for a beat. "That's not important. What is important is that you're spending too much on things you don't need." He paused for dramatic effect. "For example, why did you send $500 to that online store last month?" "It was a present for Faye," I countered, anger beginning to simmer. "A bicycle for my granddaughter's birthday." "Mom, $500 is excessive for a child's gift. Besides, Faye already owns a bicycle." "It was a gift for my granddaughter, from Iris," I corrected him, my voice firm. "And no, she didn't have a bicycle. The one you and Veronica gave her last Christmas was a tricycle. She's 6 now, she's outgrown it." Laiano and Veronica exchanged a knowing glance, the unspoken thought loud and clear, poor old Rose. She's getting confused, Anyway, Laiano pressed on, completely ignoring my clarification. "I think you need assistance managing your money. Ever since Dad passed, your spending has become unpredictable." "What exactly do you mean by that?" I managed to ask, keeping my voice level. "Well, that cruise you booked last year. $700 for a week on a ship. That's just irresponsible." I took a deep breath. "That cruise was a gift from me to Iris and her family. We had a wonderful time. And besides, it was my money Owen and I earned together." "That's precisely my point, Mother." Laiano lowered his voice, as if I were a particularly slow learner. "You can't just throw money around. Who knows how many years you have left? You have to plan for the future." "What future, Laiano?" I asked, each word feeling like a needle piercing my skin. "The one where I sit in my house, afraid to spend a single dime without your permission?" Veronica cleared her throat softly. "Rose, darling, we're simply concerned about you," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sympathy. "Laiano and I often talk about how challenging it must be for you, all alone in this large house. Perhaps you should consider something more appropriate for your age." I stared at them both, a sudden, chilling realization dawning on me. They wanted me to sell the house. This house, which Laiano probably saw as the most valuable asset in my portfolio. "I am doing just fine in this house," I stated, my voice unwavering. "And I have no intention of selling it." "No one's talking about selling right now," Laiano quickly interjected, though his eyes betrayed him. "But you should start thinking about it. The real estate market is booming." "What about the beach house?" Veronica chimed in. "Have you even been there once in the last 2 years? The beach house was Owen's and my sanctuary. We bought it the year before he died, dreaming of spending our retirement there. But fate had other plans. I rarely went after he passed. Too many ghosts." "No, but that doesn't mean I want to sell it," I retorted, knowing a small part of me had been considering it lately, but not for his reasons. "Mom, the cabin is just sitting there, losing value. You pay taxes, insurance, utilities. It's all money down the drain." "I'll consider it," I said, recognizing it was the only way to end this particular line of attack. Laiano nodded, seemingly satisfied his words had made an impact, at least outwardly. "There's something else." He pulled another document from the folder. "I spoke to our family lawyer, Mr. Burton. He believes you should arrange a power of attorney, just in case you, need assistance with important decisions." The blood drained from my face. Power of attorney. For him, I assumed. "It's purely a precaution, Mother." Laiano forced a smile, but it looked strained. "You're not getting any younger, and sometimes situations arise where you need to act quickly, like selling a house, or a beach house." I couldn't help the sarcasm dripping from my voice. Not necessarily, Veronica interjected. But you must admit, Rose, it would simplify things if Lionel could help you with paperwork and banking and all that. I looked from my son to my daughter-in-law, trying to pinpoint the moment it all went wrong. When did my bright, caring boy transform into this controlling man who saw his mother only as a burden and a potential inheritance? After Owen died, I felt utterly lost. We'd been together for 43 years, and then, in a blink, he was gone. A heart attack took him so swiftly I didn't even get to say goodbye. In those first months of grief, Lionel truly was a rock. He handled funeral arrangements, the paperwork, sorting through Owen's belongings. I was so grateful. But then, something shifted. He started taking an increasing interest in my finances. At first, it was innocent questions. Was I managing my bills? Did I need help with taxes? Then came the unsolicited advice: where to invest, what expenses to cut. And now, bank statements and power of attorney. I don't think I require a power of attorney, Lionel, I stated firmly. I am perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. Mom, it's just a safety net, he insisted. No one is saying you can't make decisions, but what if you fall ill? What if something happens to you? Then I'll reach out to you, I replied. Or Iris. Lionel's face tightened imperceptibly at the mention of my daughter. He'd never concealed his disdain for Iris's life choices, as he called them, choices that led her to a humble life as a botanical garden gardener instead of the corporate career he deemed the only worthy one. Iris? He scoffed. Mom, she can barely manage her own finances. How could she possibly help you? Iris is doing just fine with her life. A wave of anger surged through me. She's happy. Can you say the same? Lionel looked as if I'd slapped him. Veronica placed a hand on his arm, a gesture of support. We're not here to discuss Iris, she said, her voice cold. We're discussing your well-being, Rose. No, I countered, standing from the table. You're discussing my money. And I think we should end this conversation. Lionel rose too, his face flushed with barely contained fury. Mom, you're being irrational. I'm trying to help you. I didn't ask for help, Lionel, I said quietly. And I certainly didn't give you permission to examine my bank statements. How, exactly, did you gain access to them in the first place? He stammered, then mumbled something about Mr. Burton assisting him. Mr. Burton had no right to provide you with information about my accounts without my explicit consent, I declared, feeling my resolve harden. I'll be calling him tomorrow. There's no need to bother him, Lionel quickly said. I was just trying to ensure you were all right. You so rarely share the details of your life with me. Because it is my life, Lionel. I met his gaze directly. And I will live it precisely as I see fit. The rest of their visit passed in a suffocating silence. Veronica feigned enjoyment of her tea, and Lionel leafed through a magazine, pretending not to seethe. Half an hour later they left, leaving behind an untouched blueberry pie and a vague promise to continue this conversation later. When the door finally closed, I leaned against it, taking a long, shaky breath. My heart hammered like I'd just run a marathon. I wasn't accustomed to confronting Lionel. Usually, I'd just nod and acquiesce, anything to avoid conflict. But something was different today. Perhaps it was his audacity with the power of attorney, or his patronizing remarks about Iris, or simply the cumulative weight of years enduring his controlling behavior. I walked to the living room and picked up a photograph from the mantelpiece. Owen and me, the day we bought this house. We looked so young, so full of dreams. What would you do, Owen? I whispered, tracing his smiling face. The answer came to me instantly. Owen had always encouraged my strength, my independence. You're not just my wife, Rose, he'd often said. You're your own person, with your own dreams and desires. Never let anyone, not even me, dictate how you live your life. The next morning, I woke with a surprising sense of lightness. Despite the unpleasant exchange, yesterday had reawakened a long-dormant determination within me. Over my coffee, as I flipped through my planner, I noticed an upcoming visit to Iris. My mood brightened immediately. My daughter Iris was Lionel's complete antithesis. Where he was calculating and driven, she was spontaneous and joyful. Where he pursued material gain, she sought harmony in life's simple pleasures. Though I loved both my children, in recent years, it was Iris who brought genuine warmth to my heart. I packed quickly, deciding to go earlier than planned. A visit with Iris always lifted my spirits, and today, I needed that surge of positive energy. The Spring Botanical Garden, where she worked, was a short 20-minute drive. As I parked and walked through the main gate, the familiar perfume of flowering plants and damp earth greeted me. I knew exactly where to find her, the rose garden. It was her favorite section, one she tended with a special, almost sacred affection. And there she was, indeed, hunched over a thorny bush, meticulously pruning faded blooms. In her wide-brimmed straw hat, gardening gloves, and simple linen dress, Iris looked so utterly natural, so at peace, my heart swelled with pride. Her blonde hair, tied back in a loose ponytail, shimmered like spun gold in the morning sun. "Mom!" she exclaimed, spotting me. "You're early." She pulled off her gloves, rose from her knees, and wrapped me in a tight hug. She smelled of earth, roses, and that fresh, youthful scent I always associated with her. "Thought I'd catch you at work." I smiled. "Do you mind?" "Of course not. Just finishing up this little section. Wait a minute, and we can go for tea." I settled onto a nearby bench, watching her deft, confident movements with her gardening tools. Her actions spoke of love and years of dedicated experience. It felt almost impossible to believe Lionel had once scoffed at her career choice. Asterisk, how can you spend 4 years in college just to end up digging in the dirt? Asterisk. I remembered him saying it the day she announced her profession. Back then, I hadn't known what to say. I just pressed my lips together. Now, watching her, I saw how absolutely right she was to follow her calling. A few minutes later, Iris tidied her tools, took off her hat, and came to me. "Come on, Mom. We have fresh blueberry pastries in the cafeteria today." We strolled through the garden to the small cafeteria by the exit. Here, Iris was truly herself. Staff greeted her by name, and visitors frequently stopped her to ask about various plants. As we settled at a corner table with herbal teas and muffins, Iris looked at me intently. "Is something wrong, Mom? You look like you've made a big decision." I always marveled at her ability to read me. While Lionel seemed to see only what he wanted to see, Iris always perceived what lay beneath the surface. "Lionel came by yesterday." I sighed. "With Veronica." "Oh." Iris frowned slightly. "What did they want this time?" I recounted the entire conversation, his attempt to get a power of attorney, his relentless pushing to sell the house and the beach house. Iris's face grew more serious with each word. "This is completely out of line, Mom," she said when I finished. "He has no right to interfere in your life like this." "I know," I replied. "And yesterday was the first time I really made him understand that." Iris's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "You did? What did you say?" "That it's my life, and I'll live it as I see fit." I felt a surge of pride remembering my own firmness. Iris reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm so proud of you, Mother. I know how difficult it is for you to stand up to Lionel. He's always had a way of pushing people around." We finished our tea, and Iris suggested we walk to the greenhouse to see her new orchid collection. On the way, we chatted about daily life, her work, my classes, recent news. "How are Brad and Faye?" I asked as we entered the warm, humid air of the greenhouse. Iris's face lit up at the mention of her husband and daughter. "They're great. Brad's on a massive project right now, electrifying a new industrial complex on the edge of town. He's in charge of the entire electrical system there. You know, he secured all these special permits last year, and now he's in huge demand. Factories, new buildings, everyone wants him as a specialist," she said with genuine pride. "And Faye? She won the school science competition last week. Just like me, she loves plants. I smiled, picturing my granddaughter diligently studying leaves for a school project. I really need to come visit you all, I said. It's been too long since I've seen Faye and Brad. Actually, Iris paused in front of a display case of stunning purple orchids, though she wasn't looking at the flowers. She was looking at me. I was hoping you'd join us for dinner tonight. We have some exciting news we'd like to share. There was an anticipation in her voice that piqued my interest. Of course, I'd love to come. Something good, I hope? Very. Iris smiled mysteriously. But the rest is for dinner. Be there at 6. Brad's making his signature lasagna. After the greenhouse, Iris showed me the new Japanese rock garden she'd been tending for months. We spent another hour strolling through the botanical garden grounds before I headed home to prepare for the evening. At 6 p.m. sharp, I parked outside the modern Brooklyn Heights apartment complex. It was an impressive sight, several tall towers of glass and concrete, surrounded by meticulously planned green spaces. Iris and her family had recently mortgaged an apartment here, and I still hadn't quite adjusted to the idea that my daughter, with her unprofitable profession, was living in one of the city's most desirable neighborhoods. Faye met me at the door. My granddaughter practically flew out the moment she saw my car. Grandma! She rushed to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. Come quickly! Daddy's making lasagna, and I help with the salad. I hugged her, marveling at how fast she was growing. At 6, Faye was a spitting image of Iris at the same age, the same bright brown eyes, the same blonde hair, the same boundless energy. We took the elevator to the 10th floor, and Faye led me down the hall to apartment 104. As the door swung open, the comforting aroma of Italian spices and freshly baked bread enveloped me. Brad emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with close-cropped blonde hair and kind eyes, always reminding me of Owen's younger brother. Rose, he hugged me warmly. Good to see you. How was your trip? Fine, thank you, Brad. And it smells delicious. Hope it tastes good. He grinned. Faye, why don't you show Grandma your new drawings while I finish dinner? Faye pulled me into the living room, where a gallery of children's artwork was spread across the coffee table. While my granddaughter enthusiastically explained each piece, I took in the apartment. It was a spacious, bright two-bedroom with panoramic windows overlooking the city park. The furniture was modern and minimalist, but there were so many personal touches: family photos, books, travel souvenirs, Faye's crafts, vibrant plants in every corner. There was an unmistakable atmosphere of love and comfort, something sorely lacking in Liano and Veronica's perfectly furnished but cold home. Iris soon joined us, having changed into a simple house dress. Faye, go wash your hands before dinner, she said to her daughter, then turned to me. Thanks for coming, Mom. Brad and I can't wait to share our news. Dinner, which was truly exceptional, Brad's lasagna deserved all the praise, was filled with easy conversation. Faye chattered about school, Brad joked about his electrician colleagues, and Iris shared stories from the botanical garden. I watched them, feeling a deep gratitude for this part of my family, sincere, loving, real. After dinner, Faye begged her father to play a board game, and they settled into a corner of the living room, leaving Iris and me to clear the table. So, I prompted, helping my daughter load the dishwasher. What's this news? Iris positively glowed with happiness. Remember I mentioned a wonderful apartment in our complex? It's on the 9th floor, directly below us. 1 bedroom, a studio kitchen, with a terrace and a park view. She paused, then added with obvious excitement. Brad and I were thinking maybe you'd like to move there? To be closer to us, to Faye? I stared at her in surprise. Move here? Yes. Iris took my hands. Mom, it's a brand new complex with everything you could need: shops, cafes, a fitness center, even a small clinic and pharmacy, and the park right outside your window. And we'd be right upstairs, just 1 floor away. I was so taken aback by the offer that I didn't reply immediately. But Iris, it must be incredibly expensive, and I have my house. A house that's too big for you alone. she said softly. And one that demands constant upkeep. Imagine how lovely it would be not to worry about a leaky roof or clogged pipes. Everything new, modern, comfortable. Brad, noticing our serious conversation, left Faye with the game and came over. Has Iris told you our idea yet? He asked with a smile. Rose, this truly is a fantastic place. I've seen the apartment myself. It's not as large as ours, but it's incredibly cozy and well designed. A real gem. But how could I afford an apartment like that? I asked. Even if I sell the house. The house and the beach house together are worth significantly more than this apartment. Brad explained. You could buy it outright, no mortgage, and still have a substantial amount left over. I considered this. I'd resisted the idea of selling the house before, especially when Lionel suggested it. But now, with the offer coming from Iris and Brad, and with the prospect not just of selling, but of starting a new chapter surrounded by the part of my family that truly appreciated me, it sounded tempting. Let me show you, Iris said, pulling a glossy brochure from a cupboard drawer and spreading it before me. The pages showcase bright, modern apartments with panoramic windows, stylish interiors, and breathtaking views. Then she pointed to a plan of the complex. A park, a pond, bike paths, cafes, shops, every amenity imaginable. And here's our apartment. She pointed to a floor plan. And here's the one on the 9th floor we're talking about. I studied the booklet, and with each page, the idea grew more appealing. Living in a modern apartment free from the worries of maintaining a large, old house. Being close to Iris, Brad, and Faye. Having access to all the complex's infrastructure. And crucially, disposing of my property as I chose, not at Lionel's insistence. It's very tempting, I admitted, but I need time to think it over. It's a huge decision. Of course, Mother. Iris hugged me. We just wanted you to know about the possibility. Brad and I have been thinking about it ever since we saw the advertisement for that apartment. Imagine how wonderful it would be. Faye could come over after school. We could have dinner together, go to the park, and no Lionel telling you what to do and how to do it. Brad added with a slight chuckle. Faye wrinkled her nose when she heard her uncle's name. Uncle Lionel is always so serious, she said with typical childlike candor. And Aunt Veronica never really smiles. Faye. Iris tried to look stern, but I could see her fighting a laugh. Don't talk about relatives like that. But it's true, Faye insisted. Grandma, if you live nearby, we can see each other every day. Looking at my granddaughter's eager face, I felt a profound warmth bloom in my chest. Maybe this really was what I needed. A fresh start, surrounded by people who loved me for who I was, not for what I could give them. I'll seriously consider your offer, I said, and for the first time, I truly meant it. And I'll call a realtor tomorrow to see what my house and beach house might be worth. Iris beamed, and Brad nodded approvingly. The rest of the evening unfolded in a warm, familial glow. Faye and I played a game of chess. I let her win. Brad shared pictures of his new project, and Iris discussed her plans for a small patio garden. When it was time to leave, I felt a lightness and peace of mind I hadn't experienced in years. On the drive home, I couldn't stop thinking about Iris's proposal. The Brooklyn Heights complex truly was impressive, modern, comfortable, with excellent amenities. The thought of living so close to my daughter and granddaughter, seeing them daily, being a real part of their lives, filled me with joy. Yet the decision to sell the house where I'd spent most of my life with Owen wasn't easy. So many memories, so many stories within those walls. But perhaps it was time to move forward, to begin a new chapter, leaving the past behind while keeping the precious memories in my heart. The next morning, I called Hugo Prescott, the realtor Owen and I had worked with when we bought the beach house. Hugo was known for his meticulous attention to detail and his honesty, qualities I valued, especially in financial matters. Rose, what a pleasant surprise. His voice was genuinely warm. What can I do for you, Hugo? I began, surprised by my own resolve. I'm thinking of selling the beach house, and possibly the main house too. Could we meet to discuss the details? Absolutely. He agreed immediately. I can stop by this afternoon if that works for you. We arranged to meet at 2. I spent the morning gathering paperwork for both properties, and even the car. The thought of saying goodbye to the place I'd lived most of my life brought mixed emotions. But whenever doubt crept in, I'd picture Faye's eager face talking about seeing me every day, and my determination returned. Precisely at 2, Hugo's car pulled up. Punctuality was another of his strong points. I made tea and cookies, and we settled in the living room. So, Rose, tell me more about your plans. Hugo pulled out a notebook and pen. I told him about Iris's offer, the apartment in Brooklyn Heights, my desire for a new chapter. Brooklyn Heights is an excellent choice. Hugo nodded approvingly. It's one of the city's most prestigious new developments. The construction quality is superb, and the infrastructure is outstanding. What do you think of my idea to sell both houses and my car? I asked. Would it be enough to buy an apartment there? Hugo tapped his pen thoughtfully against his notebook. Let's run some numbers. The real estate market is incredibly strong right now, especially for a property like your beach house, close to the water, in good condition. It's quite valuable. Your main house is in a desirable neighborhood too, and despite its age, it's very well maintained. As for the car, how old is it? 5. I answered. But the mileage is low, and I rarely drove long distances. Hugo made a few more notes, then looked up and smiled. Rose, I'm quite confident that the proceeds from these sales will more than cover the cost of the Brooklyn Heights apartment. Even with all the taxes and fees, you'll have a decent amount of money left over. Something inside me finally relaxed. It was one thing to dream about moving, another to know it was financially viable. Okay. I nodded. Where do we begin? I suggest we start with the beach house, Hugo said. It will be easier to sell and give us a good indication of how the main house will go. Can I go and see it in the next few days? Sure. A pang of guilt hit me. I hadn't been there in over a year. Owen had loved the cabin so much, and I'd all but abandoned it. It might need a little work. Don't you worry about it, Hugo assured me. I know some excellent contractors who can spruce it up in no time. As for the car, I can recommend a reliable used car dealer. We agreed to visit the beach house the following day, and Hugo left, leaving me feeling like I'd just taken the very first step toward a new life. The beach house tour went better than I expected. Even though I hadn't visited in over a year, the local support staff Owen and I had hired years ago had done a fine job. The cottage was clean, well-maintained, needing only minimal cosmetic repairs. Hugo took photos, measured rooms, and prepared a detailed description. Rose, I think we can list it next week, he said as we drove back to town. With any luck, we'll find a buyer quite quickly. Properties like this are moving fast. And so it was. Within 10 days of the house appearing on real estate websites, we had 3 potential buyers. The young couple who ultimately made the best offer fell in love with it at first sight. It's exactly what we were looking for, said the woman, Elizabeth, gazing out over the ocean view terrace. A place to escape the city's hustle. As I watched her and her husband, Nathan, making plans for the cabin, I felt a strange sense of relief. This cabin deserved to hear laughter again, to be filled with life and love. Owen would have been pleased. The beach house sale proceeded smoothly and quickly. Elizabeth and Nathan paid even more than our asking price. They loved the place that much. My car also sold for a good sum. As Hugo had predicted, the low mileage and excellent condition made a significant difference. The main house, however, was a little more complex. Despite its prestigious neighborhood and spaciousness, its age and particular style limited the pool of potential buyers. Hugo suggested some renovations to freshen up the interior before listing it. Modern buyers prefer bright, open spaces, he explained as we discussed the action plan. A few strategically placed halogen lights, fresh, light-colored paint, maybe some wallpaper, and the house will look completely different. I agreed. The thought of altering anything in a house that had remained unchanged for so many years made me uneasy, but Hugo was right. After 2 weeks of work by the renovation team, the house looked fresher, more contemporary, yet still retained its unique character and charm. All this time, I hadn't told Lionel about my plans. Part of me wanted to call him, to explain what I was doing and why. But another part, the part still smarting from his attempts to control my life, preferred to keep it a secret until the very last moment. After all, I didn't owe him an explanation for my decisions. Iris, on the other hand, was kept informed every step of the way. She helped me sort through my belongings, deciding what to take to my new apartment, what to give away, sell, or discard. It was a strangely liberating process, sifting through decades of accumulated items, keeping only what truly mattered. "Are you sure you want to get rid of this?" Iris would ask, each time I set aside something she thought might hold sentimental value. "I carry my memories with me, dear," I'd reply. "And things are just things." There were exceptions, of course: photographs, Owen's letters, a few special pieces of furniture that would fit into the new apartment. But most of what filled Owen's and my home was simply stuff I was ready to leave behind. Finally, almost 2 months after my first conversation with Hugo, a buyer emerged for the main house, a married couple with 2 teenage children, seeking a spacious home in a good neighborhood. They made an offer slightly below the asking price, but after a little negotiation, we reached an agreement that suited both parties. "Congratulations, Rose," Hugo said as we signed the final papers. "You've successfully sold all your real estate, and at a very good price, I must say." I felt a strange cocktail of emotions: relief, excitement, a touch of sadness, and above all, a profound sense of freedom. For the first time in years, I was completely unburdened by the obligations and responsibilities of home ownership. It was both frightening and exhilarating. The next day, Hugo and I went to the Brooklyn Heights sales office to finalize the purchase of the condo Iris had suggested. Iris herself joined us, taking a day off from the botanical gardens. Mrs. Holloway, Mr. Prescott, the sales manager, an elegant woman named Vivian, greeted us in a spacious office with panoramic windows overlooking the complex. "We are pleased to welcome you. I understand you're interested in apartment 902. "Yes," Iris confirmed. "My mother is considering moving to Brooklyn Heights, and this apartment is perfect. It's 1 floor below ours." Vivian smiled. "An excellent choice. This apartment is one of our gems, compact, yet highly functional, with a beautiful view of the park. Would you like to see it now?" We walked through the complex's manicured grounds to the building. Along the way, Vivian highlighted the various amenities: a pool, fitness center, 24-hour security, underground parking. "Brooklyn Heights is designed to maximize residents' comfort and safety," she explained. "All the services you need are available within the complex, yet we are only minutes away from downtown." We took the elevator to the 9th floor, and Vivian opened the door to apartment 902. I held my breath as I crossed the threshold. The first thing that struck me was the light. Large, floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with natural light. The apartment was smaller than my old house, but so intelligently planned that it felt spacious and airy. "The main space here is the studio kitchen." Vivian led us into the main room. A fully equipped kitchen with modern appliances, a bar counter that doubles as a dining table and a workspace. The living area is designed so you can truly enjoy the view from the window. And indeed, we had a magnificent view of the park: green trees, winding paths, a small pond with a fountain. It was like a miniature oasis in the heart of the city. "And here's the bedroom." Vivian opened the door to the next room. "It's not the largest, but it's very cozy. The built-in closet saves space, and the window faces the same side as the living room, so the park view is preserved." The bedroom was compact, but thoughtfully arranged. Enough room for a bed, a small dresser, even a window seat. I imagined waking up here in the morning, watching the sun rise over the park, and a deep sense of peace settled over me. "The bathroom," Vivian continued, showing me the next room. "Shower cubicle, toilet, wash basin, space for a washing machine, all the essentials." The bathroom was tiled in light colors, visually expanding the space. modern fixtures, a large mirror, several built-in storage cabinets. Everything was meticulously considered. And finally, the gem of this apartment, the terrace. Vivian slid open the glass doors in the living room, and we stepped out onto the small but very pleasant terrace. There's enough room for a table and a couple of chairs. You could have a mini potted garden or simply enjoy the fresh air and the view. I walked to the railing and took a deep breath. From here, the park seemed even closer, and the city's hum felt farther away. It was the perfect spot for morning coffee or afternoon tea. So, what do you think, Mom? Iris came over to me, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Do you like it? It's perfect, I said. And it was true. The apartment embodied everything I was seeking, compact but not cramped, modern yet cozy, with a view that soothed my soul. We returned to the sales office to discuss the financial details. Hugo, as always, was invaluable. He helped me navigate the complexities of the deal, ensuring I secured the best possible terms. Given that you are willing to pay the full price outright, with no mortgage, we can offer you a small discount, Vivian said, reviewing the documents. Additionally, if you choose the furniture package, we'll include it at cost price. I glanced at Hugo, and he gave a faint nod, confirming it was a good offer. When can I move in? I asked, my impatience growing. The apartment is completely ready, Vivian replied. As soon as we complete the formalities, which will take about a week, you can move in. Walking out of the sales office, I felt like I'd just taken the most significant step of my life since deciding to marry Owen. It was both terrifying and incredibly exciting. You won't regret it, Mom. Iris hugged me. We'll be so close. Faye will be able to come over after school. We'll have dinner together, go to the park. I know, honey. I hugged her back. And I'm not sorry, not anymore. On the way home to the house that would soon no longer be mine, I reflected on how my life had utterly transformed. Just 2 months ago, I'd felt overwhelmed by Liano's attempts to control me, feeling old and helpless. And now, I had successfully sold 2 houses and a car, purchased a new apartment, and was preparing to embark on a completely new chapter of my life. The money from the sales had genuinely surpassed my expectations. After buying the apartment and setting aside funds for a new, smaller car, I had a substantial amount left over, and I already had plans for it. I decided to pay off the majority of Iris and Brad's mortgage. They deserved it, not just for their kindness and care, but for inspiring me to take this dramatic step. But I hadn't said a word to Liano, not out of vindictiveness or a desire to punish him, but simply because it was my decision, my life, and I didn't feel the need to answer to him. That evening, sitting in my nearly empty living room, most of the furniture already sold or given away, I felt a strange lightness. It was as if by shedding possessions, I was also shedding the weight of the past, of expectations and conventions. In the silence of the empty house, I could finally be honest with myself. I was ready for change, ready to leave the past behind and step into a future of my own choosing. Liano's call came early the next morning, just as I finished breakfast. For the past few weeks, I'd been completely absorbed in preparing for the move. Most of my belongings were boxed, some furniture sold, the rest tagged for my new apartment, Iris's, the thrift store, or the dump. Seeing my son's name on the screen brought a faint unease. We hadn't spoken since the day he tried to get me to sign the power of attorney. He'd called a couple of times, but I hadn't answered, not feeling ready for another conversation about my financial security. "Good morning, Lionel," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Mom." He sounded unusually excited. "I finally got through to you. I have great news." "What news?" I asked, my muscles tensing. "I sold your beach house and car." His tone was so smug, I could almost picture him leaning back in his chair, a self-satisfied smile on his face. Got a very good price for both. Given the state of the market, it was the perfect time to sell. I remained silent, trying to process what I was hearing. Lionel had sold my property I no longer owned, which I had sold myself 2 months ago. "Are you there, Mom?" he asked when the pause stretched. Yes, Lionel, I'm here, I answered slowly. And I'm trying to understand how you managed to sell something that doesn't belong to you. What? There was confusion in his voice. What are you talking about? We discussed this. Remember when I said the beach house was just losing value and your car was too big for a single woman your age? We discussed it, but I didn't give you permission to sell it. I said, a strange calm settling over me. And more importantly, I sold both the house and the car 2 months ago. A long silence followed. I could almost hear the gears turning in my son's head, trying to make sense of this information. What? He finally squeezed out. Is this some kind of joke? You didn't have a, how did you even? I worked with Hugo Prescott. I explained. Remember him? He helped your father and me when we bought the beach house. Very competent realtor. Lionel seemed speechless. Why? Why didn't you consult me? Why didn't you consult me before you sold my property? I countered, my voice calmer than I expected. Another pause. Mom, Lionel finally said, his tone shifting to that condescending one I loathed. I know you're upset, but I was only acting in your best interest. Now tell me, seriously, did you really sell the house and the car, or was it just, fantasy? I felt anger ignite within me, but I forced myself to remain composed. If you don't believe me, Lionel, call the registry office or the transit authority. They'll confirm that neither the cabin nor the car are registered in my name anymore. Another silence, but this time I could hear Lionel breathing heavily. Mom. His voice became strained. If this is true, we have a serious problem. I've already received the money from the buyers. The full amount. Then you certainly do have a problem. I agreed. Because you sold something that didn't belong to you, or to me. I need to come over, he said suddenly. We need to discuss this in person. I'll be there in an hour, with Veronica. He hung up without waiting for my answer. I slowly put the phone down, feeling a strange mix of emotions, anxiety, anger, but also a perverse satisfaction. For the first time in a long time, Lionel was truly facing the consequences of his controlling behavior. I called Iris and briefly recounted the conversation. Oh my God, Mom! She couldn't contain her laughter. He really got himself into a mess, didn't he? I'm afraid so, I replied, feeling a little guilty for finding the situation amusing. He's on his way here with Veronica. He'll be here in an hour. Do you want me to come over? Iris asked. For moral support? I thought for a moment, then shook my head, even though she couldn't see it. No, darling. I think I'm better off handling this on my own. But thank you for the offer. Exactly an hour later, as I finished boxing the last of the books, the doorbell rang. Lionel stood on the threshold, pale and tense, with Veronica behind him, her face a mix of irritation and worry. Come in, I said, stepping aside. They walked into the living room and stopped, looking around the half-empty room littered with boxes. What's going on in here? Lionel asked, his voice higher than usual. I'm moving, I answered simply. Have a seat if you can find one. I've already sold most of the furniture. They settled awkwardly on the couch, which I'd left behind because it wouldn't suit my new apartment's decor. I sat in the chair opposite them, hands folded in my lap, waiting for them to speak. Mom, Lionel began, clearly attempting to sound reasonable. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was just trying to help you. The beach house needed maintenance. The car was too large. I found excellent buyers, got a good price. All for your own good. For my own good? I echoed. Lionel, you sold my property without my knowledge or consent. How can that possibly be for my own good? You're getting older, Mom. He grimaced slightly as he said it. It's difficult for you to make sound financial decisions. I just wanted to spare you the stress of the process. Lionel. I leaned forward, looking him directly in the eye. I am 67 years old. I do not suffer from dementia or any other condition that would impair my decision-making ability. I am quite capable of managing my finances, as evidenced by the fact that I have successfully sold both the beach house, my car, this house, and bought a new apartment. All without your help. You sold the house? Veronica spoke for the first time, her eyes wide with shock. Yes. I nodded. 3 weeks ago. The new owners move in 2 weeks. Where are you going to move to? Lionel asked, his voice trembling with barely contained anger. Brooklyn Heights. I couldn't suppress a slight smile as I watched his eyes widen in surprise. A lovely apartment on the 9th floor, overlooking the park. The floor directly below Iris and Brad's apartment. Brooklyn Heights? Veronica seemed genuinely stunned. But that's one of the most expensive new developments in the city. Indeed. I agreed. But selling the 2 houses and the car brought in a very good amount of money. More than enough to buy the apartment without a mortgage, and cover some other expenses. Lionel looked at me as if he were seeing me for the very first time. His face cycled through shock, disbelief, then a dawning realization, and finally, something akin to pure panic. Mom. His voice turned hoarse. Do you realize I've already received the money for the beach house and the car? The full amount? The buyers expect me to transfer the paperwork to them in the next few days. Yes, that is a problem. I nodded. A problem you created yourself by selling something that doesn't belong to you. You have to help me, he suddenly exclaimed. This is your fault. My fault? I raised an eyebrow. How can selling my own property be my fault? You should have told me. He was almost shouting now. You knew I was in the business of selling. No, I didn't, I replied calmly. You never mentioned it once in our conversations. You asked me if I was considering selling, and I said I would think about it. That was all. Lionel. Veronica turned to her husband, her voice icy. You sold property without the proper paperwork. I had a power of attorney. He defended himself. From our family lawyer, Mr. Burton. You mean a forged power of attorney? I clarified. Because I never signed a power of attorney in your name, Lionel. Never. My son's face turned ash-gray. Burton said it was standard procedure, that since you were a widow and I was your eldest son, I had the right to, you forged documents. Veronica jumped up from the couch, her eyes glinting with rage. Do you realize that's a felony, Lionel? Forgery? Fraud? Selling someone else's property? I didn't forge. Lionel stood too, his face contorted. Burton said it was legal. Then Mr. Burton should refresh his knowledge of the law. I said. Because I'm quite sure a power of attorney requires my signature. Lionel paced the room, running his hands through his hair. What am I going to do now? The money. I've already spent most of it. Spend it? Veronica seemed shocked. On what? On investments, he mumbled. And a new car. And the trip I wanted to give you for your anniversary. So you spent money that wasn't yours on a gift for me? Veronica looked as if she were about to strike him. And now we could both be accomplices to fraud. I didn't know. Lionel raised his voice. How was I supposed to know she'd sell everything behind my back? Behind your back? I couldn't believe my ears. Lionel, it's my property. I don't have to answer to you about what I do with it. You're my mother. He turned to me, his face twisted with anger. Of course, you have to consult me, especially on such important decisions. No, I don't. I remained calm, which seemed to infuriate him even more. I am a capable adult. I make my own decisions. And where has that gotten you? He spread his hands wide. You sold the family home. You bought a condo in this fancy complex that doesn't suit you at all. You're going to live right next door to Iris, who can't even. Don't finish that sentence, Lionel. My voice hardened. Go on. Tell me what you really think of your sister. He paused, apparently realizing he'd gone too far. I just meant that you're accustomed to a certain way of life. He said more softly. The house, the garden. You'll feel cramped in a small apartment. That's my concern, not yours, I replied. And in case you're wondering, I'm genuinely looking forward to moving in. No more worries about a leaky roof or broken plumbing. Everything is new, modern, comfortable. And yes, I'll be close to Iris, Brad, and Faye, who, unlike some, respect my right to make my own decisions. Lionel looked as if he wanted to say something, but Veronica beat him to it. Let's get back to the main problem, she said, turning to my son. You took money for property you don't own. You have to return it now. I told you I spent it. Lionel raised his voice. At least most of it. I don't have that kind of money. Then you'll have to borrow it. Veronica cut him off. Because the alternative is prosecution for fraud. Borrow from whom? Lionel looked cornered. The bank? With what collateral? We're already up to our necks in mortgages. That's not my problem. Veronica crossed her arms over her chest. You created this situation. You're the one who has to deal with it. Mom. Lionel turned to me, his tone suddenly shifting to pleading. You have to help me. You don't want your son to end up in jail, do you? I stared at him, feeling a strange mix of pity and disappointment. This grown man, my son, who always thought he knew best, now looked like a frightened child. Lionel, I said softly but firmly, I can't help you. The money from the sales has already been distributed. Some of it to buy an apartment, some to pay off Iris and Brad's mortgage, some for a new car more suited to the city. The rest I'm saving for my future. You gave the money to Iris? Lionel looked as if he'd been punched. My sister who works as a gardener and lives beyond her means in a luxury complex? Your sister who has a loving husband with a good job, a beautiful daughter, and lives by her own values, not other people's expectations. I corrected. And yes, I helped them with their mortgage because I wanted to do it. It's not fair. Lionel was almost shouting. She was always your favorite. This isn't about favoritism, Lionel. I sighed. It's about respect. Iris respects my autonomy, my decisions. She offered me an option, but she left the decision up to me. She wasn't trying to control me or convince me that I wasn't capable of taking care of myself. I just wanted to help. His voice sounded almost pitiful. No. I shook my head. You wanted to control. That's different. Veronica, who'd been silently observing our exchange, suddenly turned on Lionel. I cannot believe you put us in this position. Her voice was icy. You went behind your mother's back, probably broke the law, and now we could lose everything because of your incompetence. Don't you dare call me incompetent. Lionel turned sharply toward her. I was trying to keep us financially secure. I was thinking about our future. Provide security by deceiving your mother? Veronica sneered. That's a wonderful plan, Lionel. Just perfect. You never support me. Lionel raised his voice. Always criticizing, always finding fault. Because you're always making mistakes. Veronica started yelling too. First that bad investment last year. Now this. Do you realize we could lose our house if we have to pay that money back? I watched their argument with growing discomfort. It was an unpleasant sight, two grown people screaming at each other, oblivious to my presence. And yet, there was a certain poetic justice in it. Lionel, so fond of controlling others, was now completely out of control of the situation himself. I think you'd better continue this conversation at home, I said, rising from my chair. I still have a lot to do in preparation for my move. They both turned to me, as if only just becoming aware of my presence. Lionel looked confused. Veronica looked furious. Yes, of course. Veronica was the first to regain her composure. I apologize for the scene, Rose. We really must go. She headed for the door without waiting for her husband. Lionel lingered, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite pinpoint, a mixture of anger, resentment, and perhaps fear. Mom, he began, but I shook my head. Not now, Lionel. You need to deal with the problem you created and perhaps rethink some things. He stood for another moment, as if wanting to say more, but then he just nodded and followed his wife out. The door closed behind them, and a blessed silence filled the house. I returned to my chair and took a deep breath. Strangely, I felt no gloating or satisfaction that Lionel was in this predicament, only fatigue and a slight sadness. After all, despite his flaws, he was my son. And it pained me to see how his own actions had led him to such a crisis. But at the same time, I felt strangely relieved. It was as if the last threads binding me to the past, to a life where I let others decide for me, had finally been severed. I was free, not only from extra belongings in a house that was too big, but also from expectations and control. In 2 weeks, I would be moving into my new apartment in Brooklyn Heights. And despite the drama that had just played out in my living room, I was looking forward to this new beginning. Moving day was surprisingly sunny and warm for early fall. The movers had already loaded the last of the boxes into the van, and I took one final walk around the house I'd lived in for nearly 4 decades. The empty rooms echoed with my footsteps, and I felt a strange mixture of nostalgia and relief. "Goodbye," I whispered, standing in the doorway of the bedroom where Owen and I had spent so many nights. "Thank you for everything." I didn't cry. All the tears had been shed before, in those first months after Owen's death, when every corner of the house reminded me of him. Now I was ready to move on, to start a new chapter. As I closed the front door behind me, Iris was already waiting by her car, ready to escort me to my new home. "Are you okay, Mom?" she asked, hugging me. "More than okay," I smiled. "Let's go." Brooklyn Heights greeted us with a vibrant energy. People strolling along park paths, sitting in sidewalk cafes, exercising on sports fields. The place pulsed with life, and I felt a surge of energy just being there. My apartment on the 9th floor was exactly as I remembered it, bright, spacious, and perfectly laid out. But now, with my furniture and personal belongings moved in, it was truly mine. The panoramic windows filled the space with light, and the terrace offered a wonderful view of the park. "What do you think?" Iris stood next to me, watching my reaction. "It's perfect," I said. And it was the truth. The next few days passed in a flurry of settling in and unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, hanging pictures. Iris, Brad, and even little Faye helped me, making the work a family activity. "Grandma, look!" Faye exclaimed, pulling an old photograph from a box. "I found a picture of Grandpa. It'll look great right here on the dresser." "That's a wonderful idea, sweetie." I kissed my granddaughter on the top of her head, touched by her thoughtfulness. By the end of the week, the apartment was completely organized and felt as if I had always lived there. It was a strange but pleasant feeling to start fresh in a new place, while maintaining a connection to the past through carefully selected objects and photographs. Life in Brooklyn Heights was even better than I expected. The complex's infrastructure was thoughtfully designed, from the 24-hour concierge service to the gym and pool. Within the first month, I discovered yoga for seniors, a book club, and weekly movie nights at the community center. "You look happy, Mom," Iris remarked one evening as we sat on my patio, enjoying tea as the sun set. "I do feel happy," I admitted, for the first time in a very long time. And it was true. Every morning I woke up with a sense of anticipation. What would the day bring? Who would I meet? What new things would I learn? This energy and curiosity reminded me of my youth, of the time before marriage, when the whole world seemed full of possibilities. I became fast friends with several neighbors, especially Eleanor, a 70-year-old former literature teacher who lived next door. We often went to yoga together, and then to coffee shops, discussing books, movies, and life in general. "You know, Rose," she once told me, "at our age, starting something new is an act of courage. Most people just cling to the old and familiar, even if it makes them unhappy." Her words made me think of Lionel. After that memorable day when he found out about my move, we hardly spoke. He called a few times, but the conversations were tense and short. I knew from Iris that he was facing serious financial problems due to the need to repay the defrauded buyers. "He took out a loan against the house," my daughter told me. "And he and Veronica seem to be fighting about it all the time. She accuses him of incompetence. He snaps back. It's not a very pleasant situation." I felt regret, but not guilt. Lionel had created this problem through his own actions, his desire to control my life. And while it pained me to see my son suffer, I realized I couldn't save him from the consequences of his own decisions. My life, meanwhile, was taking on a new rhythm and meaning. I began volunteering at the local library twice a week, helping with the children's reading program. It reminded me of when Iris and Lionel were little, and I would read to them before bedtime. I also enrolled in a watercolor painting class, a hobby I had always dreamed of but never found the time for. It was a special joy to spend time with Faye. Now that I lived so close, she would often drop by after school, and we would spend time together until Iris and Brad got home from work. We'd bake cookies, play board games, sometimes just sit on the patio watching the birds and squirrels in the park. "Grandma, I'm so glad you live close by now," Faye said to me one day when we were making Thanksgiving cards. "I used to see you only on weekends, but now I see you every day." Her words warmed my heart. I too was grateful for this opportunity to be a real part of my granddaughter's life, to see her grow and develop, to participate in her daily joys and anxieties. One day, about 3 months after I moved in, I was returning from morning yoga when Michael, the concierge, stopped me in the lobby. "Mrs. Holloway, you have a visitor," he informed me with slight awkwardness. "Your son. He's been waiting for about half an hour, but I didn't want to disturb you during class." I was surprised. Lionel had never come to Brooklyn Heights before, much less unannounced. "Thank you, Michael. Where is he?" "In the lobby bar." The concierge pointed to the glass doors at the end of the lobby. "I told him I couldn't let him upstairs without your permission, as you requested for all visitors." I nodded, grateful for the strict adherence to security rules. One of the perks of living in Brooklyn Heights was precisely that no one could simply go upstairs to the residential area without the tenant's approval. Lionel sat at the bar, sipping his coffee and nervously checking his cell phone. He didn't look good, pale, gaunt, with dark circles under his eyes. When he saw me, he stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over his cup. "Mom, finally!" he said with relief. "I thought you were avoiding me." "I was at yoga," I explained, sitting down at a table away from the other patrons. "You could have called before you came over." Lionel sat across from me, his gaze roving restlessly over the stylish interior of the lobby bar. "It's a beautiful place," he said finally. "Impressive." "Yes, I like it here." I nodded. "What brings you here, Lionel?" He hesitated, then blurted out, "Mom, I need your help." I waited for him to continue, though I already knew what he was referring to. "The situation is complicated," he said, avoiding my eyes. "The loan I took out to repay the buyers, the interest rate was higher than I bargained for. And Veronica, she left me. She filed for divorce." I felt a pang of regret. Despite our differences, Lionel was still my son, and it pained me to see him suffer. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely. "Yes," he grinned bitterly. "She said she could no longer live with a man who was not only incompetent financially, but also so arrogant that he refused to admit it." He was silent for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Mom, I know you have money left over from selling the houses. I need a loan to refinance the loan. I'll pay it back with interest as soon as I stabilize the situation." I looked at my son for a long time. Sitting in front of me was the man who always thought he knew best how to live my life, how to manage my money, how to make decisions. A man who had tried to control my life under the pretense of caring. And now he was in a situation he couldn't control. "Lionel," I said softly but firmly, "I can't give you that money." "Why not?" His face contorted with resentment. "You helped Iris with the mortgage. Why can she and I can't?" "It's not a matter of can or can't," I explained. "The point is, you don't need financial help. You need to learn to live within your means, accept the consequences of your decisions, and most importantly, stop trying to control things that don't belong to you." "But I could lose the house." He sounded desperate. "Maybe," I nodded. "And it would be hard. But Lionel, money isn't the solution to your problem. Your problem is much deeper than that, and the only person who can solve it is you." He looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite define: shock, disbelief, maybe even a glimmer of realization. "I am your son," he said at last. "Shouldn't you be helping me?" "I am helping you," I answered, "by not letting you escape the consequences of your actions. Sometimes the greatest help is to let a person find their own way out of a situation they've created." Lionel sat in silence, staring into his nearly empty cup. Then he stood up, pulled on his jacket. "I understand," he said dryly. "I'm sorry to have bothered you." "Lionel," I stood up too, "you will always be my son, and I will always love you. But I will no longer indulge your desire to control everything around you, including me. When you're ready for a relationship based on mutual respect, I'll be happy to see you." He nodded without looking at me and headed for the exit. He stopped at the door, as if he wanted to say something, but then he just walked out. I went back to my apartment, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and calm. Talking to Lionel was difficult, but necessary. And perhaps, in the long run, it was the best thing I could do for him: give him a chance to grow up by facing the consequences of his actions. That evening, Iris, Brad, Faye, and I had dinner together, as we did almost every night. After dinner, when Faye went to her room to do her homework, I told them about Lionel's visit. "He's really in a bad situation," Iris sighed. "But you did the right thing, Mom. Lionel needs to learn to take responsibility for his actions." "I know," I nodded. "But that doesn't make the decision any less painful." Brad, who had been silently listening, suddenly got up and left the room. He returned with a bottle of wine and 3 glasses. "I think we could all use some," he said with a slight smile as he poured the wine. We sat in cozy silence, sipping the wine and looking at the city lights outside the window. It was at times like this that I realized how fortunate I was to be with Iris and Brad, surrounded by their love and support. "By the way," Brad said suddenly, as if remembering something, "I've been meaning to tell you for a long time, Rose. Do you remember when Iris and I first offered you an apartment in our complex?" "Of course," I nodded. "It was the best offer I'd gotten in a long time." "Well, actually," he looked a little embarrassed, "I asked a colleague of mine, Neil, to hold the apartment for you. He works in the sales department of Brooklyn Heights." "Really?" I looked at him in surprise. "Yes," Brad nodded. "When we heard that the 9th floor apartment was vacant, Iris and I immediately thought of you. And to be honest," he looked at Iris, as if asking permission to continue. She nodded, smiling. "If you didn't have enough money from the house sale, we were planning to take out an additional mortgage and buy that apartment for you," Brad finished. "We just wanted you to be here, with us." I felt a lump rise in my throat and tears well in my eyes. These two, my daughter and her husband, were willing to take on an extra financial burden just so I could be closer to them. Not because they thought I was incapable of taking care of myself, but simply out of love and a genuine desire to be together. "I don't know what to say," I mumbled, wiping away my tears. "It's the most touching thing anyone has ever done for me." "We love you, Mom," Iris said, simply squeezing my hand. "And we want you to be a part of our daily lives, not just a weekend visitor." I hugged them both, feeling gratitude and love overwhelm me. In that moment, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I had made the right choice. Not only in moving to Brooklyn Heights, but in the way I had lived my life, raising children who had grown up so differently. Lionel, with all his flaws, was a product of his choices: to seek control, to seek material success, to seek power. Iris had chosen a different path, the path of love, of caring, of genuine relationships. And now, sitting in the warm living room, surrounded by the love of my family, I was deeply grateful that I had made my choice. The choice to be with those who truly valued me for who I was. It was dusk outside the window, but there was a brilliant light in my heart. The light of the new life I had chosen for myself. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to stand up for yourself against someone you loved?